Hello, and welcome to a new content architecture for the new normal. This is a special webinar event sponsored by Egnyte and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I am delighted to be your moderator today. Now, before we get to today's timely discussion, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session with all of our panelists at the end of the presentation, where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh is going to fix most video and audio and slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide technical assistance. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and there are 6 links from Egnyte that I'd like to point out. The top one is a PDF ebook on controlling content chaos. A lot of the discussion today will be based on that ebook, so I'd highly recommend downloading that one. There are some other fascinating PDFs there too. There's a cybersecurity trends for mid-sized organizations. There's a report about defending your organization from within by putting data first. And there's an Egnyte business value report. We also have a couple of links from Egnyte. One goes to the Egnyte solution page, and the other is a link to a free trial. Additionally, you can find some links to Actual Tech Media resources like the Gorilla Guide Book Club and the ATM Event Center, which is a calendar of upcoming webinars. So I encourage you to access those resources now or throughout the event and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in your handout section as well. You just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. And to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question at the end of the event. We'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. But with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Shane Harris, who's Senior Director of Product Management for Egnyte. In addition to Shane, we have 2 of Egnyte's customers. We have Pete Borchers, who's Director of IT with Madison Dearborn Partners, and we have Alec Manukian, who's Managing Director of Information Technology with Experian. So we should have a great discussion of the issues and get into some of the nitty-gritty of some real implementation. So it's going to be a great conversation today. So welcome, everybody. Why don't we just take a minute to let everybody get to know you guys and what you do. So Shane, if you don't mind, let's start with you. Maybe tell us a little bit about Egnyte and your role there.
Yeah, Shane Harris, Senior Director of Product Management here at Egnyte, focusing on the platform, an ecosystem side. I've spent most of my career in the cybersecurity governance space, even a little stint at Gartner in the past. So this has been my continued and always focus is, the building solutions right for the customer needs and solving.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. Pete, tell us a little bit about Madison Dearborn Partners and what you do there.
Yep, thanks, Scott. Pete Borchers with Madison Dearborn Partners, IT Director, oversee day-to-day IT for all of our users, as well as very heavy into cybersecurity. Madison Dearborn Partners is a private equity firm, so very heavily focused in the financial services sector.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Pete. And Alex, last but not least, same question to you. Tell us about Experian and your role there.
Thanks, Scott. So Experian is a registered investment advisor. I manage the IT department at Experian. We are, just like Pete said, in the financial sector, a few hundred employees, and these days hybrid, obviously, across the entire nation.
Great. Yeah, we'll be talking a lot about hybrid today, so that's excellent. Well, thanks, everybody, and Alec, thanks for joining us as well. Appreciate it. Now, before we get into the full discussion, I do want to just level set a little bit about the issues that are driving how companies are managing data. So Most of the session today is going to be a discussion. This is the only slide that you're going to see today, but let me bring that up. So I want to walk quickly through 3 concurrent trends that are disrupting business and impacting companies and their data. And these are 3 themes that we'll return to again and again throughout this conversation about content architecture. So the first is the move to the hybrid workforce. It's now been 2.5 years since the pandemic forced widespread shutdowns in the US. It's hard to believe now, but I remember back in March 2020 having conversations about whether people would be working home for 2 weeks or as much as a month. So now, we're a lot farther in, and there's sort of no going back. Some organizations, especially like Wall Street banks and some other places are enforcing 100% back in the office policies, but it's not anywhere near the norm. And organizations have seen how effectively they can operate, and employees have also seen how effectively they can operate. And so, I'd like to share just a couple of numbers here from Gartner that show how much things have changed for knowledge workers, especially in 2019. You had 27% of workers being remote. And Gartner is projecting that by 2023, it's still going to be, after like almost everyone went home, and then there's been a sort of a slow shift back, still going to be 47% remote, so almost half. So that's one of the big trends. One of the next ones that we wanted to talk about here is the volume and velocity of data. So there've been sort of 3 major waves of file sharing that you can think about. You had the post-1993 wave, driven by the release and widespread corporate adoption of Windows File Server. And then you saw the onset of consumer cloud storage, both in enterprise versions and as shadow IT purchased by individual employees. And then wave 3 is sort of the tech heavyweights of Google and Microsoft trying to address control and complexity issues through these unified cloud-based suites of business apps. And also in that mix are sort of the specialized productivity apps. Just a few examples would be like Slack and Zoom and Trello and Airtable. So all these waves and all these apps are coexisting, and they're generating more and more data every day. And that brings us to a subcategory of that trend, which is threats to data. So consider that one recent survey found that 51% of SMBs are managing more than 10 repositories. That's small businesses, in a lot of cases. A lot of security for this data also depends on the strength of your users' passwords, and they're all personally managing dozens of passwords for dozens of applications, which often leads to password reuse or weak passwords that are easier for those users to remember. So ultimately it's sort of no wonder that according to Accenture in a survey that they had done, 65% of business leaders feel their cybersecurity risks are increasing. Finally, there's one more trend that I just want to quickly cover here, which is new regulations. So if you're not knee-deep in compliance on a day-to-day basis, you may be surprised to learn that state legislatures proposed or passed at least 27 online privacy bills to regulate data markets and protect personal digital rights in 2021. So HIPAA, SOX, NIST, and other data standards have a bunch of new cousins coming along at the state level. So these are the 3 trends: hybrid workforce, volume, velocity, and security of data, and data privacy regulations. They're all critically important in content architecture, and we're going to hear a lot more about those today. But Shane, I'll kick to you first. Do you feel like that covers the big trends around content architecture right now? Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, where Egnyte started out was with a strong collaboration platform. And if you go backwards even a little bit, there's still a lot of organizations out there struggling with the on-prem data sprawl, the integration into multiple applications, the data velocity, how to manage, how to control, and how to deal with that, right? So a lot of the early focus was a cloud-based collaboration platform that was easy to manage, provided a lot of controls, increased security and insight, while at the same time making it easier to support your end users. As we've seen work from home, the great thing is this now has even, become a bigger factor for most organizations. But with that said, there's still a lot of them out there that have the challenges of what's been out there for a while, like the on-premise type systems, managing the users in that type of environment. How do you migrate to, the cloud, and what are the benefits of that? And then we'll talk more about that as we go forward. But the big thing is reducing the complexity of what they're managing. The IT budget continues to decrease, right? You got to find a way to do more. And then the other thing is a lot of the cloud application growth requires that the data be out there, similar. Can you integrate into those cloud platforms without introducing more risk into your environment, right? So how do you do that and support all these users at the same time? So that's what Egnyte set out to do, and we started with a strong collaboration platform. And then as we've moved forward, we've continued to improve the other areas that have grown over time. But I figured we would start with just the basics of what made the decisions, obviously to make that move, and then how did the impact on your users, and then we can go from there to the other the other areas that you covered.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds great. And so Pete, in that light, let's start with you. What were sort of the most important criteria for moving to Egnyte for Madison Dearborn Partners?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, coming from the legacy Windows file storage environment that, I think a lot of customers or individual businesses have or had, for us, one of the big things was simplifying and improving our business continuity and disaster recovery plans, right? Having that on-premise system required us to have various off-site backups, and then those get backed up somewhere else. So you have physical geographic locations, have to maintain other software subscriptions and so forth. So I think cutting down the complexity of business continuity and disaster recovery was a big one, and also simplifying the recovery. So, think of an event like ransomware, which is devastating to any business, but knowing how quick Egnyte makes that restoration process to either a couple folders or your entire file structure, for us was a big reason for moving over to Egnyte.
Gotcha. Great. Okay. So business continuity, DR, sort of like top of mind there. Alec, what about for Aspiriant? What was the most important driver for you guys to go to Egnyte?
When we started on this journey in 2019 of selecting a cloud-based storage collaboration platform, similarly to Pete, we had Windows environment on-prem. We have offices across the US, so we were replicating, backing them up, replicating them, securing them. Our criteria in 2019 was security. We wanted to make sure that we had a cloud platform that was restricted, secured for our users, and accessible from only our devices. So at the time, I think Egnyte didn't even have the ransomware features, but we'll talk about that later. So that was our initial criteria, and we went through a lengthy RFP process.
Okay. All right, great. So security was top of mind for you guys. Let's talk about the migration to the Egnyte cloud. Pete, how was the migration for your IT teams and for your user community?
Yeah, definitely. So we migrated during 2020, so pretty much the height of COVID, 100% remote workforce. So we had to develop a plan to migrate all these users who had their devices at home. Nobody's coming back into the office and so forth. So we partnered with the Egnyte project team, who assisted us with creating that roadmap from taking our on-premise data, moving it to Egnyte, and then at the same time seamlessly cutting over all of our users to access the data they need on a day-to-day basis. That all went off without a hitch. I think working with Egnyte and having them, hand in hand with us, create that plan together, test out that plan thoroughly, and then roll it out. And of course, the Egnyte team was available for any issues encountered. Post cutover was a big success for our IT team. There was think of cutting over 100 plus users of an entire file structure, and we might have only had a few tickets to the help desk regarding, an email they forgot to read regarding the instructions they were supposed to follow. But the process in itself was very seamless and easier for our users to transition over. And again, that was while working completely remote at the time.
Wow. Okay. Super. And Alec, for Aspiriant, what was the migration like for you guys?
So during our RFP process, one of the questions we had was migration tools. How would Egnyte help us recreate our on-prem environment. Specifically, we had thousands and thousands of client folders that had unique permissions based on who works with those clients. And Egnyte provided all those tools, whether it was through API access, whether through their migration tool that they have. They check those checkboxes. Just like Pete's experience, I would say it was a very smooth transition. We used both the Egnyte web feature and the Egnyte drive letter feature. So we started the migration. We didn't have to do it all in one shot. We did it in small phases, and it was very seamless. Users just basically started using a slightly different drive letter when the cutover happened and the migration happened. And for the IT stuff, moving all those on-prem NTFS security rights to Egnyte through API tools that we used took minutes to script them and to replicate thousands of uniquely secured folders. So it was a very, very smooth transition for us.
Gotcha. And so you guys are both relatively recent migrants, to Egnyte, experience starting in 2019, Madison Dearborn in 2020. Obviously, the pandemic happened right in the middle there. So, I'd like to move to some of the challenges, with that big shift to work from home over the past few years. So just sticking with you on this one, Alec, how was Egnyte able to improve outcomes on remote work for Experian?
So for the remote workforce, traditionally users would have to VPN in to access data. With the Egnyte solution, we were able to restrict them down to their devices, the corporate deployed devices. Obviously, all the multi-factor authentications, user passwords, things that you touched on earlier, those are all requirements, but we have the additional requirement of locking it down to our devices. So we had started the migration pre-pandemic, and when the pandemic started, our users could already access Egnyte through their laptops with just a simple internet connection. We accelerated the Egnyte migration post-pandemic so that everyone had that ability. But it basically was a great tool to have right at the beginning of the pandemic and have that flexibility where users can connect from anywhere as long as they have an internet connection.
Yeah, it sounds like you can really see how that would be huge. Pete, what about for Madison Dearborn partners? How did Egnyte help, improving outcomes on remote work for your organization?
For sure, and similar to Alec, right? We VPN requirement to access data in the legacy system, and our users were already traveled a lot, so kind of in and out of the office pretty frequently. So one of the common tickets I think our company and most companies face who use VPN for accessing key data is sometimes VPN can be glitchy, whether it's user error, computer error, whatever the case is. So being able to decommission that VPN requirement and give users easy access to their data with simply an internet connection while working from wherever was certainly a big plus. I'll tell you the other piece as well is being able, collaboration, whether over Zoom, however you were doing it remotely, collaborating with both your team members and external people you deal with was a huge item for us. And Egnyte did provide easy ways for our team to securely send files that might contain sensitive data and or receive files from others that might have that data in it as well. So the ability to securely, share and receive files was a big plus when everybody is working remote from their devices and so forth. And lastly, to Alec's point as well, is Egnyte ties in nicely with a number of security tools. So for us, easily configuring policies to simplify how people access data by just identifying them by their corporate device and so forth was a big plus for moving to Egnyte and how that helped with the work from home.
Yep. And then of course, as we've grown that, we've seen the data sprawl increase, right? We've seen now with the work from home, the newer challenges, and it brought a whole new generation of something you talked about, was how do I govern and comply with the regulations? How do I continue, improving my continuity? How do I, what's the way that I can manage my data better? Because what we saw was the move to the cloud increased, decreased, I think, took away a lot of the challenges, but it also brought some new ones, which was that overarching, where's my data, what's the value of it, how do I get a handle on it, how do I classify it, how do I control the access to it, it's the same thing from the work from home. Is now I have all these users that work from home. Now I have a new threat vector and a new entry point, right, to where my network's being extended. So with that being said, while it helped in some ways, it's also brought a whole new slew of problems. And Egnyte, one of the next major steps for us was, how do we improve the insight into what data you now have, right? So you've moved it to the cloud, you've got rid of this, you've solved some of the challenges, but how do you improve DR? How do you make the continuity situation, better so your business keeps on moving? And then next was, like I said, the big thing, access controls. Where is it? What's the value of it? What's the risk? Does it get out? How do I know that it got out? How do I know that, basically my data is being exposed? And as regulations and compliance, needs have grown, they're not going away. Like you said, there's some cousins. I like the way you put it, there's cousins of the regulations now coming out. That's going to continue to increase, right? We're going to see stricter and stricter, things that's going to reach further and further into the corporate environments. And you have to have tools that will help you, or you're going to spend a significant amount of time trying to meet those regulations and then prove it, right? So it's not only about just even having the tools. In a lot of cases, it's having that insight and ability to provide that either audit report or provide that visibility back out, right? So that you meet those requirements and check boxes and you don't spend a lot of time and resources on it.
Yeah, and so I like what you were saying there, Shane. And you were touching on some DR stuff, and Alec, I wanted to ask you about, when you guys went to Egnyte, how did that improve your DR continuity plans or your resources?
So as I mentioned, we were initially using DFS replication Windows on-prem. So we always were making sure that our network, our WAN, our replication, our backups are always up to date, working properly. We would do benchtop DR recovery tests, test scenarios. Pretty much all of those went away the minute we moved to Egnyte, to the cloud platform, because we didn't have to worry about RAID, backup drives, failed drives, hot spares. We didn't have to worry about DFS replication, WAN speeds. Egnyte handled all of that on the back end. They handled the data, the replication, and so on. So from a DR standpoint, it checked a lot of checkboxes. It wasn't our primary reason why we went to Egnyte, but it definitely was a big plus to not worry about all of those. And you don't realize it until you migrate and you start thinking about what you're not worrying about anymore when you have when you've done this for decades of having NTFS folders on site replicated through Microsoft Windows servers. It's a great relief to have another cloud firm worry about all that for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like you said, I think security was your main driver, but you've seen a lot of benefits on the DR side. Pete, you did mention that DR was sort of your main driver. Do you have anything to add from the Madison Dearborn experience as far as Egnyte improving your DR continuity plans or resources?
For sure, I do. I think one of the items people sometimes are a little scared, or maybe scared is the wrong word, but scared about moving to the cloud, right? Putting all my data up there. So Egnyte also offers, which we use here, an on-premise appliance. So all of our data not only is cached into Egnyte, but from a DR scenario, all that data is cached locally to our devices. So from a peace of mind perspective, if the Egnyte cloud were to ever encounter issues, we can repoint our users to access that data on the cached device. And the other item too, I think I would, tell everybody on this webinar today to do is look at your costs. I know Egnyte is not free, but look at the cost you're paying for your DR environment, your network connections, your backup, your hardware, etc. If all that were to go away, maybe that itself pays for the Egnyte solution. So cost was a nice driver as well in terms of the win-win scenario, from a simplifying BC and DR to also cutting the cost for us at the same time.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So the peace of mind and the on-prem appliance and the cost savings as well. Pete, sticking with you for this one, what kind of controls and reporting do you typically use and depend on?
And with our legacy kind of Windows-based environment, right, it was always a challenge to report on where data moved, right? Did somebody take some data potentially before they left the firm, or did some data get sent to a person it shouldn't have been sent to? So I think Egnyte makes it very easy from a reporting standpoint to, not only proactively report on, should you be curious on where your data is moved, copied, and so forth, but it also real-time alerts for you. So Egnyte will monitor how people use data when they go outside of those norms. Alerts will go to whoever you want them sent to say, X person maybe deleted a lot of files today, or X person copied a number of files to their local device. So having that reporting feature is great. And the other item is, being able to easily run audits on who has access to what folders. So like Alec was saying, probably like many of you else, there are probably hundreds of folders with unique access. So being able to easily report on those folders and have different departments verify that access on a routine basis definitely helps from an audit perspective.
All right, great. And Alec, do those sound like controls and reporting that you're typically relying on, or are there other things that you use as well?
Definitely. For those of you who are running a governance overlay on Windows servers, there are several firms that do that. They're very costly. They're very infrastructure intensive. We've used some of those. Initially, when we moved to Egnyte, the governance module wasn't our primary thought. It was a nice to have, but it wasn't something that we were sold on. However, after using Egnyte for years and having governance protect, whatever it's called these days, right? It started as Egnyte Secure and Protect, Egnyte Governance. Having that module is irreplaceable. Not only do we get on-demand reporting of who's touched what file, who's moved, deleted what file, how much data has grown, who has what permissions at a given time. The alerting feature is great. It's not necessarily just for bad things, it's also for good things. When you see trends of someone downloading large files and all of a sudden creating hundreds of files in a folder, you get alerts. Most of the time it kind of revalidates what you think certain departments do, and you could see all of that. So although initially it wasn't our desired tool to have, we heavily rely on it. It helps us every day to govern the data.
Oh, that's great. And Alec, I'll stick with you. As far as identifying and classifying information, how do you go about it? How do you protect and identify or classify information within Egnyte?
Yeah, this one is a bit tricky for us because being an RIA, all the data we have with clients are PII. We have account numbers, we have personal information. Everything and anything we do has to do with PII. So just identifying that was not enough because we knew that our client folders have a lot of PII. We know that our client folders have a lot of sensitive information. It's not a surprise that Egnyte's tools lit up and said, you have all this information. We knew that. What helped us though with it is to identify areas where some of that data or replicate data or spreadsheets shouldn't be. Help us control those. Make sure that we educate our users of not downloading large spreadsheets with information in department folders where others could have access to, and so on. So we've used the tool extensively to identify sensitive information that shouldn't be where it should be.
Gotcha. And Pete, I imagine you're in a pretty similar boat with sort of PII information.
100%. And just to maybe add 2 points, because of course, we're doing what Alec and firm is doing as well in regards to PII and so forth. But I think 2 things that the Egnyte Secure and Govern or Protect feature made easy for us was, one, you have to understand the compliance regulations your firm is subject to. But where Egnyte takes that to the next level is when you go to set up these scans of your data, you don't have to know necessarily all the subcategories of HIPAA or PCI, for example, that you have to search for. You literally log into the system, check a box, and say, I am HIPAA compliant, and it will go out and find everything that pertains to a HIPAA compliant regulation, right? So it simplifies that process. And then it takes it a step further to say, okay, now I found all this data. Do you want us to automate a process for you and delete, scrub that information from the data, archive it somewhere for safekeeping, where the nice thing with the archival feature is the users will still see that the file exists in that location, although the file is not there. So when they open it, that stub file, they're told to reach out to IT and have IT recover that file for you. So it's reducing the footprint of that type of data in our file share, which then of course reduces the risk of, should something happen like a ransomware event or something of the nature, we have less of that data out there for that person to steal.
Yeah, we just need to make that shortcut feature available so only authenticated users get it. Everybody else gets the error. And the bigger world problem be solved, right? Everybody gets an error. But that leads me right to the next one, which is the bigger security attacks, right? The attack vectors that have continued to increase that go after the data. And now that we've seen that, like I said earlier, tenfold with work from home, right? It's gotten to be a bigger problem. Ransomware, we see it every day. We see the news articles come up. And I don't think it's just about, here at Egnyte, one of the things that we look at is not, there's two parts. One is how do we help our customers protect them, protect the data? How do we protect it for them? We see ransomware, we see malicious events, content coming in. We can also watch for insider threat, access controls, and all those things that we can see inside. But the second part of that is playing friendly with a larger security ecosystem, right? Not everybody has one. Matter of fact, most organizations have multiple security products or platforms that they're trying to use, right, to stop these. So you need I think it's big in this area is that you not only provide the tools that you can to do the best that you can, and that's what we strongly focus on, was how do we control what's within our preview and then keep extending that out. But not only that is how do we make sure that when those things occur, that we also are integrating Egnyte with other applications and other areas and other security products, right? So that the customer has a holistic view and not just being, one kind of centric down view, from a vendor standpoint.
Gotcha. Staying with security there, Pete, with the security priorities you have in place today, how does Egnyte provide or improve your ability to detect ransomware or other malicious attacks? How do you use it?
For sure. I think one of the great things with Egnyte is it proactively detects ransomware and will notify you, right? So most often, with a legacy or on-prem file server, you come in on a Monday or it happens over a holiday weekend, you hear from a user saying, hey, I can't open these files, right? And you look at these files and these files are encrypted, and you start to see that, your whole environment's been taken over with ransomware. So the ability for Egnyte to proactively notify you that, A, I'm seeing ransomware in your environment, and then take it a step further and automatically roll those files back to a last known good working state prior to the ransomware encryption. Makes things much easier from an IT management perspective and being proactive in the ransomware world. And then, in the event of a widespread ransomware scenario where maybe your entire file share was encrypted, with the click of a few buttons within a couple hours, you can restore that entire file infrastructure back to a specific point in time, all through Egnyte's tool set. So again, just kind of providing that peace of mind that I can have things back up and running pretty quickly.
Gotcha. And Alec, I know security was a huge priority for you guys with the decision to go with the platform. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that, like Pete said, having that ability, the feature that Egnyte has added to be able to, through a couple of clicks, restore your entire environment in an unfortunate event of having a ransomware attack, is a huge plus. What I'll add is we recently renewed our cybersecurity insurance, and the renewal agents and the brokers were asking that specific question of how fast can you recover from a ransomware attack? And we were able to answer that specific client fairly simply by saying, well, we use Egnyte, and Egnyte has that feature. So we don't not only we have that ability to go back to backups, encrypted backups, and be able to recover from the traditional ways of recovering. But now that's a feature that's built into Egnyte that we can very quickly recover.
Gotcha. Alec, also, how are you monitoring for unusual activity? Or what policies or controls are you using to help guard against possible data leakage?
Yeah, we have alerts set up obviously for the worst case scenarios. You always want to know if there's a massive amounts of files being deleted, copied, moved.
Yeah.
But we don't want to always have false positives either. So we've tweaked those over time. Some of it is alerting, as I mentioned earlier. It's good to revalidate practices that certain departments have, whether marketing department downloads large video files and moves them around, and all of a sudden storage grows exponentially over a small project, or whether it's a department that's doing analysis on a large number of files and move them and then they delete them. So it's good to have those alerts. Our IT team regularly looks at those. I think Pete mentioned earlier the process. It's not just the alert. There's remediation. So when we look in Egnyte and see those alerts, there's a lot of actions we can take. If they weren't supposed to do what they're doing, we can stop close down their accounts or suspend their accounts or remove their permission from a folder. So there's certain action items that Egnyte lets us quickly take, or just simply noted that it's a valid business reason that they did what they did, and at least have that, which is very helpful, because when we go back and look at our audit logs, we see that we were getting these alerts. We see that we were acknowledging those alerts as normal business practices versus what someone wasn't supposed to do versus what they were supposed to do. And Shane mentioned it's not always about external threats. We as in IT have to worry about internal and external threats all the time. So the tool gives us that ability to monitor internally and external.
Gotcha. No, that's great. Pete, any other thoughts there in the way that you guys are using it?
Yeah, small thing to add that I think, a lot of times in legacy environments, this always fell on IT, right? IT's in charge of handling this. They're the ones supposed to figure out what's going on, ask the right questions. Where Egnyte, the secure and govern feature, also plays nice is you can invite or pick stakeholders from different departments, invite them into the secure and govern environment. And typically those stakeholders know what data they should be storing, what the folder structure means, and so forth, much more than maybe the IT department knows, who's not in there on a daily basis. So you can invite these, other employees to provide them access to the secure and govern portal so that they can go through and classify data, respond to alerts, and so forth. So it's not really just a IT function anymore within the Egnyte world.
Gotcha. Well, those are really interesting use cases for the monitoring and the policies and the controls. Appreciate those. So, Alec, I understand you guys have also used Egnyte. You guys have maybe had some M&A activity, and it's been helpful in the way that you manage the users and their data from M&A.
Yeah. So we've had several M&A activities in the last year. Having the Egnyte platform allows us to migrate them faster. Whether we migrate them and merge them into our environment, or we migrate them standalone and then merge them into our environment, it's a powerful tool to have. Years ago, when we had mergers, we would have to set up trust site-to-site VPNs, accessing on-prem files. And now, because of Egnyte's flexibility, we migrate their file storage or even full documents management systems in weeks.
It sounds like a huge time saving.
It's really the API tools that I think Shane and the team talk about some of the tools. When you talk to the sales teams and they start digging down to the different features you have, whether it's the sync tool, the offline cache, whether it's the API ability to set permissions, all of those help you accelerate activities.
Yeah, Shane, is there anything that you want to add about the API tools that like what's available and what your library is like there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important focus area. Obviously, that we keep not only a robust API SDK platform, but we keep extending it. So we have, a couple interests that we aggressively, go after, making sure that that the platform stays really friendly and easy to use, but giving end users as well as other vendors, right, the ability to use the platform as needed. So we have a lot of integrations that we do today, and we continue to build those. Whether you're talking about the bigger co-authoring integrations into Microsoft, all the way out to smaller integrations that are particular to one specific industry, maybe around construction, life sciences, or something like that. So we continue to do that. We'll continue to making the platform easily accessible and extending it. That has been one of the growth areas for us, and or reasons why people do use the platform. And I think it's one of those things, like I said earlier, is you have to be a friendly vendor inside of a company, inside of our clients, right? So we're going to live within a bunch of applications that they use every day, whether they're security focused or just business operation. And in order to do that and play nice, you have to have those, very friendly, easy to use APIs. So that is a very big focus area for us.
Gotcha. And some of those APIs you mentioned are Office 365. Obviously, Office 365 is central to a lot of organizations, and I understand, Pete, that some of those Office 365 integrations were important to you guys. Can you talk a little bit about what those have done for you?
Definitely. So I think, one, the easy integration, right? It's a few clicks to integrate Egnyte with Office 365. Then of course layering on top of that the ability to co-edit documents, and again, whether that's co-editing with other employees or outside parties, right? You can do that just the same, which was fantastic. And then, Egnyte, I think, within the last year or so, released a pretty nice add-on to their secure and govern section, where you can connect Egnyte to your Office 365 Exchange environment to also proactively identify, what sensitive information you might have with an email, right? So you can go back and do training and remind people, hey, you're not supposed to be sending this type of data via email, or maybe potentially turn around and implement some DLP policies through Office 365. So I think that whole world between Egnyte and Microsoft and the seamless integration has been really nice from a user perspective, and then as well from an easy to manage IT perspective.
Gotcha. Excellent. In talking about Office 365, I think one thing that might be helpful is sometimes people come in and they're trying to understand exactly what the platform is doing. Pete, I'd love to hear about what your content architecture looked like prior to moving to Egnyte. You talked about that a little bit with the Windows file servers, but how many sources of content on premises or in the cloud, and then what were you able to do in Egnyte? Like what does that content architecture look like there?
For sure, right? So when we had the on-premise file share environment, one, limited by the features, right? Co-editing really wasn't an easy option for us. So users or people would work around that by, okay, now I have some files in SharePoint. Now I have some files in OneDrive. I use OneDrive to share files, right? So you can see how the data is now sprawling across these various applications we're licensed for, which of course then makes it, from a compliance perspective, are you monitoring all of these endpoints? Are you able to report on them should you need to, and so forth? So moving to Egnyte and giving users that one-stop shop of all these things you needed 5 different tools to do before, well, guess what? You can now do those all within the Egnyte platform. I think more importantly too, for us, kind of going to that hybrid and remote workforce is, everybody loves their iPads these days and being able to be on the go and really now use that device as just like you could your laptop, because I do have access to my Egnyte files through that device. I can fully edit, co-edit, collaborate, share, etc. I can do all this from my iPad, my iPhone, and so forth. So, giving people the data at their fingertips, regardless of device, was also a big plus.
Okay, great. We've got a lot of questions rolling in. But before we get into the audience questions, Just wanted to ask Shane, what's in store for customers like Experian and Madison Dearborn partners as far as what's on your roadmap? What are you guys working on?
Yeah. So, going forward, if you look at the areas that we talked about, the strengthening the collaboration platform, there's many ways we're going to do. We're looking at increasing the content that we have the ability to, apply the platform on. So whether you're talking Teams, Slack, SharePoint, further integration into where that data is coming in, where those files are coming in, is incredibly important. It just doesn't, it's not all created on the Egnyte platform. So the visibility and integration into those is a definite bigger focus for us. We have a lot of that today, but we want to continue growing that. Obviously, just a collaboration platform and the user experience around that. Second is the stronger tool set around the secure and govern. So you'll see a lot more of the use cases expand around insider threat, being able to integrate into other DLP products, and like I said, being a good, a good neighbor, right, to other products. So our big focus there is going to be using the powerful engine that we have, making it smarter. So I think it was Pete alluded to earlier, being able to click on the HIPAA policies, for instance, and apply those, right? So all those things, we want to make those smarter. We want to reduce the false positives, right? So you're going to see the engine get smarter. We're going to see the tools get smarter. We're going to see them expansive, the expansive use of them and grow into other areas. And then, like I said, the big one on top of that is cybersecurity. It's got to be a focus of everybody. And so we're going to continue not only looking at outside external threats, but insider threats. And then how do we help organizations, see those things almost in real time as quickly as we possibly can, whether that's feeding them to a SIM or something else that they can monitor and make that, remediate as soon as possible. And then on the remediation side, another focus area for us is how do we help customers remediate when those events do occur? Because no matter how hard you try, things are still going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. And we want to make sure that we have the tools to get organizations up and running as quickly as possible. So you'll see a huge interest around those areas without going into detail of specifics, obviously. And you can always reach out to us and we'll gladly go over more of those specifics and how they can meet your needs.
All right.
The pitch.
Super. Thanks, Shane. So let's get into some of those, some of the audience questions. This first one here asking, I have a globally distributed environment. How's the performance for users outside of the US?
Yeah, I can touch on that one. We guys said that they're on the performance. A lot of times what you'll see is smart cache. I think we had one of you guys mentioned that, that there are ways to not only if you have a worldwide distributed environment, you can use the cache, smart cache to put file or areas of content locally, right, that are used every day. So you're effectively not bound by WAN or other constraints. So the performance that we see across the board is in most places is fine and all dependent obviously on the connections in between. But we do have technologies that in areas where connections are, or there's areas where there is none, in some of the workplace areas, that we do have the ability to still have the user productivity and files there with things like Smart Cache.
Okay.
I don't know if Al, you guys want to add to that. I know one of you guys have mentioned Smart Cache.
Yeah, I can add to that. So because we initially deployed Egnyte pre-pandemic, Smart Cache was a requirement because we were worried about everyone's in our large offices. Users are used to just double clicking on files from local servers and files open in seconds. So we were very concerned about what's going to happen when we have the files in the cloud. And it goes back to the RFP process. Egnyte doesn't do justice for themselves when they talk to you about the platform. Anything we asked, they had it. They had Smart Cache, they had sync, they had replication, they had AD integration, they had APIs, but the RFP process put all of that out for us. and we did deploy Smart Cache in our large offices. Fast forward to 2.5 years of pandemic, those Smart Cache servers don't get used much because there aren't that many people on-prem, and everyone's gotten used to the file speeds that are very comparable to what they were on-prem. So we still have the Smart Cache servers for large offices. We always question how and when people return back to the offices and we have larger audience, I think they'll come to play.
So the next one here, they're wondering how can users get access to their files? Specifically, do you support mobile or HTTP? So I guess I'll kick that to Shane first, and then I'd love to hear from either Pete or Alec about how they see their users connect to files.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I mean, we have support for mobile devices, so you can access your file, and then even more so, we talked about integration into some of those. Other platforms, right? So there's areas where the mobile's even extended to particular, drawings or data types where user interactions can be done on like maybe, for example, CAD files or specific genome type files. So there's a pretty heavy integration out to the mobile because obviously that not everybody's sitting in front of a, laptop or computer. We also have the drive access support, like we talked about earlier, all the way down to the traditional legacy file server, drive letter type access. There's a client for the desktop to extend some of the abilities, and then we have web access, as well. So almost every point covered. If you're, no matter which area your user wants to come in from, they'll have access to the Egnyte file system and the tools as well. So, and we'll continue to expand that. Like I said, the more and more that we can, make those productivity tools available where it makes sense, especially the end user devices, they continue to grow. But we do have all the areas covered that we see the users come in, or all our, I should say, user entry points.
Yeah, and then Peter, Alec, any insights into what users tend to value as far as do they tend to use mobile a lot to access the files, or what do you see?
Sure, I can touch on that. For us, mobile's a big play. So it's simple as going to the App Store or Google Play Store and downloading the Egnyte app, getting signed in. Right, you can sign it. It'll configure to all of your policies and so forth, and you have access to all of those files on the go. I think one of the as Shane said, depending how your users are used to using the data, that access is available. So for us, we didn't want to change how people got the data, right? So we wanted to move to a platform that still kept drive letters, not move to a complete web-based solution. Egnyte for us was the right play over a system like SharePoint, for example, that really pushes more the web version for accessing that data. So if your users are used to accessing it via web, say you're moving from a SharePoint-based environment, Egnyte offers that solution. So it does make that move and cut over and change process for users pretty seamless.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the context. Appreciate it. There's a question here from Matt in this. I think that Pete touched on SharePoint a little bit, but it might be helpful for people to understand exactly what Egnyte is doing. Matt's asking, how does Egnyte file storage compare to SharePoint? What are the advantages of migrating for customers that are heavily utilizing OneDrive and SharePoint? What are some of the differentiators that make it something that's more advanced than that?
Yeah, I was like kicked down over Alec and Pete. I know you guys touched on this a little bit in your environment. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think for us, it was Microsoft's great, but a lot of times you need, a doctorate degree to get through the environment, configure your policies, and so forth. So I think where Egnyte for us really just simplified the routine tasks. So we still use Microsoft as our security in terms of getting into the Egnyte world. So from a compliance perspective, are you on a corporate device? Do you pass MFA and so forth? But then really once you're in the Egnyte world, just the ability for users. So, just like kind of OneDrive, you right click on a file in the Egnyte world, you will have Egnyte specific options for that file, whether that's co-editing with the file, whether that's sharing the file and so forth. So very similar to kind of what you get from the OneDrive functionality, but I think from an IT perspective, it really just simplifies the, management, reporting, and security of that data.
Interesting. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Just for a future quick insight to that is we're talking about roadmap is one of the things that you see you talk about OneDrive is so a lot of organizations that have OneDrive is how do we make that more coherent? So could you imagine the OneDrive repository living on Egnyte and things like that. That's where I was talking about. You'll see some of the things that we will expand to next year. So that makes it even better. So if you have OneDrive, it wouldn't matter. You still get all the great experience, right? And there's one step further. If that happens to be your entry point, that'd be fine.
Gotcha. A question here from Paul, who's asking about, he says, do legacy enterprise systems and environments have to be overhauled in order to reach a content architecture that meets current day stresses and demands? Or, so I guess maybe this is a question about integrations, but is there a lot of work that you have to do on sort of legacy, content, legacy content to bring it into compliance?
I'll kind of take a spin at that from, Egnyte, lens first. If you're talking about bringing a legacy file over to a cloud platform, which I think is what maybe, there are some areas that in more complex environments where if you have a classification scheme that's built into a specific vendor, or something that's really rich in metadata that might not carry over, some things to be, to watch out for from a compliance standpoint, right? Otherwise than that, most of the time when you bring it over, there is, migration. We've been doing it for a while. So the migration strategies are pretty well laid out to make sure that your everything you have today is carried over. In a lot of cases, we can even get those retention and all those other definitions out of your environment and get them transferred into the Egnyte Cloud, right, to make it seamless, right? So you don't lose not only visibility, but your compliance, your regulations, and those things that you were trying to meet with that you had built on. So you don't lose all that work that you put into your legacy system. I think that's maybe where the question was going, but
and I can expand just a bit from a customer perspective. Egnyte integrates nicely with Active Directory, right? So if you've been using Active Directory all these years to manage your security, those same groups, users that you have assigned to folder permissions will come right over with the Egnyte migration tool. If you think your environment maybe is in a little bit of a disarray and you'd rather not bring it over as is and stand it up fresh in the Egnyte world, you can simply do that too. So I think the cleaner you have it day one, the cleaner it will be in the Egnyte world, because it's literally a one-for-one match from a access perspective. But again, it's by no means a showstopper if maybe permissions aren't all done by groups and they're individually assigned. Again, you can bring it over as is with the Egnyte migration tool and then go back and clean it up afterwards. But I don't think it's a showstopper to get there before you make this move.
And Alec and Pete, I just wanted to ask you, as current customers who are sort of power users of the platform, was there anything in Shane's roadmap that you're really excited about, or other things that you're aware of that are coming that you're really looking forward to seeing in the platform?
I think for me, sorry, Alec, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll just dive in, but I think it's the continued easy way to so our firm is big in co-authoring. It's not a big deal today. Users right-click on a document and they choose co-authoring when they want to co-author a file. And I think, Shane, what you're getting to is that may not be the case at some point here in the future, that any file potentially a user opens will automatically be in co-edit mode, similar to some other solutions.
Correct.
Co-authoring is a big ask for us too, but for traditional Windows-based Office products. Today, co-authoring is very easy on the web version of Egnyte. So that's a area that we would like to see some improvements. Sometimes we don't know what we need, and we've seen with a lot of the Egnyte roadmaps and the features they add, we see a lot of value in a lot of them. And then again, you don't know what you need until sometimes you see these features come out, you test drive them, and then you see the value.
Well, it's funny. I think, Alec, you were sort of alluding to that all through, where the security was really important to you guys to start out, and then the governance turned out to be really valuable, and the DR capabilities, were also very valuable. So, excellent. Well, I think we're running out of time here, but Shane, if somebody wants to get started with Egnyte or find out more, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's easy to reach out to us via the website, Egnyte.com, and it's a easiest way if you're looking just to get access to us, because we'll route you to the right partner in your area to get the conversation started, whether you want to jump right into technical or engage any of our great support artists and sales staff. But yeah, that's the easiest way. And just reach out to us directly. And like I said, it's whether you prefer phone, email, or any other in between.
Okay. All right, super. Well, Shane and Pete and Alec, thank you all for joining us. This has been a great conversation. I know I've learned a lot in it. I hope everybody has, and just really appreciate your time today.
Glad to participate.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to Alec and Pete and Shane here, and we will do the prize drawing. But thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Okay, and before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business, and that is the $300 Amazon gift card drawing. And the winner of that gift card today is Ken Drury from Colorado. So congratulations to Ken. We'll be in touch to get you your card. Just a quick reminder here with a few seconds left. If you haven't grabbed any of those handouts, there were those. We had 6 great handouts in the resources section there from Egnyte. So I'd encourage you to grab some of those. Learn a little bit more about what you've heard today. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.